Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, yeah, let's wait just one more minute. I think then we will record it. I think we should be fine, right?
Yeah, well, we finally passed the 10 mark, so we'll just get started. Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, How Does IEW's Writing Program Work? So we have some wonderful featured speakers today who are going to talk about their own experience as instructors, but also share, their teaching style and the details of what this wonderful, wonderful program is. Now, I want to first thank Pyramid Academy for hosting this free community webinar for all of our families here in the Chicago region and abroad as well. Thank you all for joining us, and especially thanking our Pyramid principal, Ms. Ren Lee, for organizing this event as well. My name is Tim Hua. I am the guest host for today's webinar. I'm the board chair for the Center for Future Innovators. We are a nonprofit focusing on youth education. If you all have more questions for me, you guys can send it to me later. But it's been great to work with organizations like Pyramid who are doing their best to support brilliant, brilliant minds and seeing that next generation of talent really rise up from our community. Now, to get started today, I would like to first introduce Miss Julie Renner. She is an IEW registered instructor. Julie, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a registered instructor with IEW. I have been teaching IEW curriculum for, over 15 years. I started it in my own home with my own 3 daughters, and my daughters were extremely successful in the IEW program, going on to win some national writing contests, to be honest. So very proud of them. But I also taught in the public schools. I'm a special education teacher. I have taught 5th grade as well as middle school, high school classes. I coached volleyball. And so right now, currently, I am teaching writing as my full-time job. So I have in-person classes near me, and I also offer classes online and tutoring. So this is exciting to partner with the Academy and excited to meet some new students this semester.
Absolutely, and that's wonderful. I think I know our next speaker will also talk about her experience with IEW with her own kids. I think that's been a lot of the points where the parents have really discovered that the IEW system works for them and has seen that growth for everybody who has gone through it. So yes, thank you very much. Next we have Miss Sherry Grubbs. Could you please introduce yourself as well?
Thank you for your time this evening. I met the founder of IEW, Mr. Andrew Pudua, at the very early days of the program, and that was in 2001. And I was trained by him in person when my group brought him to town a couple of years later. So I've been using this program for a very long time. And in addition, with my own students, my own children. So I have 5 children and 4 grandchildren. So today my kiddos are in college or have graduated college already, and we're starting with a new generation. So in the past I've taught on site in small group sections, but today I teach online, both in small group classes and in one-on-one private tutoring. I have students of all abilities in grades about 3rd grade through their senior year of high school.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome. So we have 2 wonderful teachers who have both a lot of experience, not just within the IEW system, but just teaching in general. But today, of course, we're going to focus a little bit on the specifics of IEW. And our first topic today is going to be, how does the IEW curriculum teach writing? And I know Ms. Julie has a couple of things she would like to share.
Sure. So IEW is a very unique program. It does not just teach writing, but it, strengthens listening, thinking, writing, speaking, encompasses all 4 together. Their actual motto is to become confident, competent communicators and thinkers. So It really pulls a lot of skill out of the student, teaches them a lot of different things, while of course learning to write well. The program is broken up basically into two sections that we call structure and style. Structure gradually builds confidence, sort of develops the organizational process of writing, while style is the other side, and that's where we teach students techniques to build into their paragraphs and essays and stories. That brings out their creativity and builds independence in them as well. IEW has what's called the Easy Plus One system. So we sort of incrementally, gradually roll out new items that the students learn over the course of the semesters. These things are supposed to become easy for them. They get plenty of practice with each new technique before we introduce new items for them and have new expectations for them. So the program's flexible. It accommodates a range of ages and grade levels and aptitudes together in one class. Students, unlike traditional curriculums, they're not grouped by grade level or age, but rather where they are at in the program with IEW. It really sometimes comes down to their reading level, where they should be at, whether that's an A level book or a B or C level. That's kind of elementary, middle school, high school. Instructors will probably talk to you about what your students' reading level is to make sure they're in the right program or the right class. From there, the classes are broken up into, whether that's style and structure classes or whether that's theme-based books. The theme-based books, just as you can imagine, you can see on the screen there, they have different themes related to them. Sherry's going to go into that more later. Let's see, all of the books encompass 9 total units that IEW rolls out. Unit 1 begins with the keyword outlining, which is really the foundation. It's that important structure of IEW. The assignments all begin with this pre-writing stage. It's really teaching them strong note-taking skills from what they're reading in the material or later on what they might be listening to. If we're talking about the 9 units, Unit 1 is just that foundational keyword outlining unit that they will use throughout all of their assignments and all of the units. From there, the even numbered units 2, 4, 6, and 8 have to do with report style writing, nonfiction material generally, and your typical essay writing, right? That builds into more sophisticated writing for high school and college level. Those odd numbered units beginning with 3 and then 5, 7, 9, those units focus more on creative writing. We start with story writing. We have the students writing from pictures. That unit really teaches them a lot of questioning techniques, how to really get inside their brain and ask themselves questions. Believe it or not, something that many kids can't do very well and have to be taught. That moves on to that inventive writing, that traditional prompt writing that you see a lot in many other writing curriculums, where students are just given an open-ended prompt to write from. So we do get there eventually in Unit 7, and then in Unit 9, that would be for most of the middle school, high school, level B, level C students. They move on to critique writing, which you may ask, where does the book report fit in? But this is a little bit more sophisticated book report with some analysis. So that is Unit 9 at the end. Not all of the level A books get till Unit 9. So for example, a lower level class for 2nd and 3rd grader may only get to Unit 6 or 7. Other units are going to get all the way to 9.
I see. Yeah,
Okay.
that makes a lot of sense. All right, I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt, but with if we could go back to the previous slide, with all of these different the sections, so the students are still getting used to the format even from second grade, right? This is the same format they're using for the younger students because it works.
Exactly. So it's just it gets more and more sophisticated as it moves along. But the keyword outline is really the foundation. They learn to take notes from what they're reading. They're allowed 3 words per line and abbreviation symbols, numbers, other things, and then they move on to practicing. That's where that speaking component comes in, because they're asked to and expected to take their outlines and basically give a speech from them, be able to speak and really think about the content before they begin jumping into the paragraphs.
Yeah, and I don't know if parents can read it very clearly, but essentially what they are doing is breaking everything down to things that and concepts that younger students are able to grasp and use as an example before they have the students even writing. So it's really learning the theory and the crafting behind it and having it available for our younger students. And honestly, this is how like college writing, academic writing is taught, but unfortunately it hasn't been taught in most of our public school systems for a lot of our students. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So when I think of, and I'm sure Sherry would love to weigh on this as well when she gets a chance. When I think of the biggies, right? The big 3 things to me that stand out with the IEW writing program, what makes it unique are number 1 is our sources, right? The books that we use, whether that be in the style and structure books, whether that be in the theme books, the sources that we bring to the students are engaging. They are at their appropriate level. We know that going in. It gives a wide variety of discussion opportunities and even further, opportunities to explore those topics further. But like I said earlier, when the students begin, they need to be at their reading level or below. That's kind of the best starting point, so that they're working with sources that they can understand. There's no problem with comprehension there. What else is unique though about the sources? We give the sources to students up front. We don't expect students to have to have that burden of finding sources to write from. Writing is really encompassing a lot of different moving parts. So having them be extremely successful from the start, it really helps to give them their sources up front that they can use to write from. Number 2, I would say the huge benefit of this program is that keyword outline note-taking strategy that they're taught. I have my own daughters who've gone on to college, and I have past students who've come back and I've asked them, what is the biggie? What is the thing that you took with you that you feel like you're still using from all of those years in working with IEW? And the KWO, the keyword outline is it. They say, it helped me stay organized. It was a way that I could take all of this information now from my university level classes and organize it in a real systematic way. That is number 2. Number 3 would definitely be, of course, we have to see the beauty of IEW is the checklists, of course. So every single assignment that the students do and they work on comes along with this checklist. Now, a lot of traditional writing programs use rubrics. We're very familiar with rubrics across the board in different subject areas and whatnot. Well, rubrics for students can be very vague, hard for them to follow, really difficult for them to connect with, and they use vague language. IEW's checklists are not that way. They're very straightforward, concrete. Students know exactly what's expected of them. So the IEW assignments they're not typically graded as an A, B, C, D type grading scale. IEW is seen more like a fine art where students just hone that skill. They get more and more techniques to practice and try out in their writing, and of course, being mentored by their instructor. What IEW holds to, rather than a traditional grading scale, would be sort of that complete or acceptable paper versus one that is incomplete. And that's not decided subjectively by an instructor or, the person who's reading your paper. That's decided by the checklist. It's whether or not a students have completed what's expected on the checklist.
I did not know that part about the IEW system, and I want to say that is absolutely amazing. I think students are graded enough on their other things that they're working on and scored enough on that maybe something like creative writing and writing in general could be a more supportive environment where it's because writing can be so difficult for younger students who have to create from nothing. But having that checklist instead of a grade aspect to it really gives them that space to develop, and I think that's great.
Yeah, that's great. I just recently listened to a podcast that IEW put out, and I can't remember exactly, but they had asked high school students what they appreciated most about assignments or getting feedback or having grades. And a lot of them answered that they would prefer the opportunity to revise, to have another chance at things, to get the feedback and then do something with it rather than just get feedback and have that final grade. So IEW is always sort of in the process of allowing kids to, work through their papers to completion according to the checklist, what's expected for that assignment that given week. And then, of course, between the instructor and the student in terms of what should be expected of them at that moment. The checklists do change from assignment to assignment. So as we introduce new things, for example, some of the style techniques that we roll out are things like strong verbs, ly adverbs, various clauses, adjectives, very concrete things that we can say, not to a student, hey, add more detail to your paper. In that case, they're sitting there shrugging their shoulders. I'm not exactly sure what to do. Instead, they look at their checklist and they say, oh, I need to add an adjective. I need to underline a strong verb. And there are boxes on the checklist to mark so they can clearly understand when they're finished, when the expectations have clearly been met, and they can call it a day and be finished. That at that point, they would turn it in. And then it's up to the student and the instructor whether or not revising would happen. And then, of course, the checklists are beautiful in the aspect that they can be tailored to students' personal needs. So this allows us teachers to have students of different aptitudes in one class. While we're all discussing a lot of similar material, and instructors might be rolling out new items that day, we can always change the expectations and modify those checklists if needed in either direction. We can challenge students who might be, in need of a little bit more, or we can tailor it back. And last but not least, the instructors are ultimately, in charge of whether or not the paper is finished and acceptable. So we all know that papers are, a work in progress until they're published. So at some point, we allow students to have their checklist complete and we move on. So those are the three, in my opinion, those are the three beauties of IEW: the checklist, the keyword outlines, and the source text. And I know Sherry is going to go into sort of the pathway and how we kind of work from start to finish.
Thank you so much, Miss Julie. That is a wonderful explanation of some of the details and most important parts of the IEW curriculum. And now we will have Miss Sherry Grubbs talk a little bit more about the K-12 pathway.
On the screen in front of you, you have a list of the different source texts that IEW offers. We tend to use these texts that are originally designed for the homeschool community because they work best in a small group environment or a one-on-one situation. IEW also offers school curriculum for larger classrooms, but we tend to work with the smaller groups. So we're going to use those sources. However, IEW, even though it is very, very popular, it's the most popular writing program in the homeschool community, it is also used by public schools and very rigorous private schools as well. This method has been implemented for over 40 years. And the basic training was originally designed by college professor James Webster for his students so that they could write their papers in college. Today, we're going to talk about the theme-based writing programs because they give us a little bit extra versatility. Julie will be teaching People and Places, which is designed for second and third grades. And in this lower chart here, you can see that People and Places gives you the grade range that it's appropriate for. So if you have a student who's reading at second or third grade level, this would be an appropriate choice. In addition, if you have a student who maybe is in fourth grade, but does not have 2 or 3 hours a week to complete the homework that would need to be done for my class, there would be less homework involved in Julie's class, and this text can be appropriate for a fourth grader as well. I will be using the medieval history text for 5th to 7th grade. A strong reader from 4th grade would be successful in this class as well if they have the time for the homework, which is about 2 to 3 hours a week, because my class has some different elements and some different homework. We'll be talking more about the homework and what my class looks like in detail in the next section of the presentation. I do use a mixture of the theme-based and video-based courses that are listed on this chart. However, when I do use the video-based courses, we do not use Mr. Puduwa's videos. I will teach the course instead. So we still just use the student books, which, as Julie mentioned, give us source text. This is like what Benjamin Franklin did in order to learn to become a great author. He would take a piece of writing that he thought was excellent, and he would take some notes, set it aside for a while, and come back to it. We're asking students to take that selection and begin with taking 3 keywords from each sentence in the very first part of our IEW units in units 1 and 2. And they become skilled at paraphrasing because they're going to retell this information back to us in their own words. And then we add in that style techniques that are a part of the dress ups, the sentence openers, and the decorations that IEW adds in as well. So over time, students will learn how to paraphrase. They'll learn how to summarize or take a lot of information and put it in many fewer words. And in the later years, in middle school and high school, in those harder reports, they'll learn how to include direct quotes with lead-ins. So by the time they get into middle school and high school, they are regularly practicing these skills that teachers want to see in all of their essays. So we do have a pathway that goes all the way from kindergarten, where children learn to read in the PAL reading program, and then begins with writing in the People and Places text that Julie is going to be using, through level A, which is grades 3 through 5. The middle school level is a great place to start as well for grades 6 through 8. And then these high school courses get pretty challenging. In order to get into my high school courses for 1C and 2C, students have to have mastered all the dress ups and all but one of the sentence openers in order to even be ready to do this level. So it takes most students at least 3 years to assimilate that much of the program and become comfortable to the point that it's natural and they're thinking in IEW ways and putting it in their writing. So each year we do repeat those units. We start again in a new textbook. And yet when I teach those units a second time or a third time, I'm teaching advanced dress ups and other tips and tricks that take everything to a new level. For example, in the story writing unit, we're going to teach how to add more detail to the setting, because the setting is not just about where and when a story happens, but it also sets the mood, which is a literary term. So we have a firm pathway that works for all the levels. Students have room to grow, and they become prepared for even university level writing. In fact, IEW just released a brand new university level writing program this week that I can't wait to get my hands on, because I have some students who are going to be seniors in high school. And my kids took dual credit classes even while they were still in high school, as many schools offer today. So I had my kids on site doing a writing program with the department head at Purdue here in town, and they succeeded very well. So, it's been very nice to have students grow up in this program, find success. It is a great bridge to speech and debate. My oldest daughter competed in speech and debate when she was in school, middle school and high school, and found IEW to be a great foundation for that. In fact, she won at the state level in a competition. My son also did win at the state level. So it's been a wonderful part of their careers, because they now write and speak for a living. She's just returning to complete her master's degree at Purdue in organizational leadership and supervision, but she is a trainer at our local hospital with 13,000 employees. So if they're doing training for nurses and doctors, they're going to come to her to help develop that presentation. So it's proven to be a wonderful resource to give her a great foundation. She decided, hey, I really like this stuff. So she's been able to turn that into a career. And a lot of my other students have also found a great deal of confidence and renewed self-esteem and new goals for themselves. I've used this for students of all abilities. I have gifted students. I have students with autism, ADHD, dyslexia. It is effective for every ability because we have this personalized checklist. We're going to stick with what's easy for that student plus one new thing on their checklist. And no one else knows what's on your checklist except for me and the student and their parents. No one else in class gets to see their personalized checklist. And what's easy for a student means they can come up with that checklist item on their own by using their IEW tools, right? We give them lists of words to choose from oftentimes. And they can do it by themselves most of the time, and it doesn't sound too awkward. And yet, we all use different parts of speech when we speak naturally. So this accommodates everyone. Some of us, we don't use very many adjectives naturally, and others of us might gravitate toward action verbs. But we can go at our own pace through that checklist. Some things we use naturally, so we'll go through that list a little faster, and other things we can take a little more time, such as my little kids who are learning to be a little fancier when they put their details together and use that who, which clause. So that adjective clause can take a few weeks to a few months to get used to for some of the littlest kids. But we give them plenty of practice and come alongside of them and help, right? If we only have one extra thing that they are working on, we are going to give them help until they achieve it. And if we push them too fast to add everything that I'm introducing in the class at once, because I'm introducing a new idea every week, either a new model for a new unit or a new dress up technique, kids can get overwhelmed. We want to build successful experiences here. And the IEW checklist allows us to do that as long as we remain flexible and be sure that we're listening to that student and keeping them in a great space for learning. Because it's so subjective, because it's so personal, and because it's some of the hardest thinking that we can ask a student to do, writing needs to be dealt with in that way that we keep kids in a space that helps them have successful experiences and builds their confidence.
It really does seem that way, and I know some parents had some other questions, but we will cover that a little bit later in the Q&A section. But yes, that really does seem one of the main takeaways is that it's very, very different from how students are generally feeling about these kind of writing assignments and being graded on their writing and how they're even working with their teachers on their writing. But this makes it so that they know what they need to get done and they can see it in a kind of visualized checklist, and that's wonderful.
Absolutely. I have one more small thing I'd like to mention. We are going to begin that medieval history class this semester, but each book I usually teach for about 12 or 32 weeks, and we're only going to have about half of that book covered in this semester. So we're planning on continuing it coming up probably in the summer. However, students cannot join this book halfway through because we would have introduced too much IEW style too quickly for them to try and catch up. So in the summer, we're hoping to probably utilize the Wonders of Science book that is brand new from IEW for grades 4 through 7. So we'll have a new book offered potentially if there's enough interest that will cover that 4th to 7th grade. And those who are doing well and feeling comfortable and are ready to move into the later units, I am prepared to take them through that second half of the medieval text and get through not just units 1 through 6 that we're going to cover this semester, but we'll do 6 through 9, and we'll even get to that argumentative essay in as gentle a way as I've learned to introduce it early. So we have a couple of exciting options available for students depending on the time they have available and where their reading levels are at.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Sherry, for introducing that aspect for us. Now we will move on to our next section, which we'll have Ms. Julie talk about, well, just a little more details about her specific course in People and Places. The questions that we are covering are what is theme-based writing, what does a lesson look like, and what is in the student material.
Sure. So the class I'll be teaching is generally for 2nd, 3rd, maybe a few 4th graders in there too, who need a little, gentler approach to the writing, reluctant writers perhaps, or those with special needs. But the People and Places in our community is going to cover construction workers, firefighters, bank tellers, just all different types of people that students will encounter in their community. We'll learn more about them. It does get through the first 5 units and then bumps over to unit 7. So at the end, I'm not sure that we'll get through all the way to unit 7 in one semester, most likely not. The book is generally supposed to be for an entire year. So they will, though, come out at the end of this semester with a very strong understanding of keyword outlining, how to read a text, a paragraph of material, and create what you see here on the screen, which is a keyword outline that was created by my students this past semester using this same book. So the first one there is on insects. That one is not from the People and Places, but I put that in there because I wanted to show you what sort of one that was done on the computer would look like versus one that was done by hand in the book. So students use a combination of words, symbols, numbers, abbreviations. You can see they love their emojis if they're on the computer. That provides a little motivation for them. So you're allowed to do, IEW teaches students, even at the high school level, to utilize sketches to take notes, any type of little picture sketches or symbols that, would just help them remember material and remember information. So this is kind of what a level A keyword outline would look like. And if we move into unit 2 from there, they would take this particular keyword outline, and then we begin to sort of roll that out into, like Sherry said, paraphrasing, putting the material in their own words. So at that point, they put away the original source. They do not look back at that original source they took notes from. We encourage them to just hide that away, tuck it away. They use their keyword outline to practice sort of telling a speech out loud. We ask parents to get involved in that. I also have my students, I say, if you have pets, you can stand in front of a mirror. They make good audiences. You could record yourself and listen to yourself tell it back. There's lots of creative ways you can go about doing the speeches out loud, but that's critical. It really helps, especially young children, to think through what they want to say before they start the business of writing. The business of writing is a lot. It's spelling, it's grammar, it's sentence structure. It can be handwriting or typing. There's a lot of things going on there. So I love this second and third grade level because it's just that all of the newness, right, of putting together a paragraph, understanding what that looks like, how to indent, how to skip lines, you know, what font size is if they're on the computer. So this is traditionally what this is what their assignment would look like. This is my student. So what you're seeing on the screen is that they learn to develop a title. They learn how to center their title at the top of the page. They learn how to indent their paragraphs. There is some vocabulary. I don't think either one of us have mentioned that yet, but IEW also builds in a great vocabulary base for students. So excuse me, I have my students mark vocabulary, as you see there, out to the side. The stylistic techniques that we teach, we have them underlined. So we have sort of this whole labeling system that we do with our papers. Dress ups are underlined. Sentence openers get numbered 1 through 6. Decorations get put in italics. So, you know, at a low level like this, a second or third grade, you would see just a few things underlined in their paragraph. So those are the things that are on their checklist. So for example, this student needed to include an ly adverb. And of course, we never ask a student to do anything without giving them the full resources to do so. So IEW gives them word lists and all kinds of ideas to pick through. They're really never on their own in just coming up with things out of the top of their head. We don't pressure them in that way. So we give them word lists that they can look through and choose. And then, of course, over time, that starts to become very independent. The other one at the bottom there is a who, which clause. That's another one that is taught after a few weeks along. And then they're also being asked to include a vocabulary word if they can in the paragraph. So this is a third grade student. He started out by handwriting his assignments back in August. And this was about October. He developed not only just the full confidence of completing his assignment, but also managed to figure out how to get it typed and turned in for me in Google Classroom all on his own independently. So he's super proud of himself, and I'm so proud of him as well. After Unit 2, just wanted to have you take a quick peek. This is a Unit 3 story for a second or third grader. Unit 3 breaks it apart into 3 sections. We deal with a story sequence chart. So characters and setting, conflict of the story, resolution. They're again given a story to work with. They're not asked to come up with their own story. We give them stories, they retell it in their own way. So this student, as you can see, the dress ups are the techniques that we teach are required in every paragraph that they write. So on this student's checklist, you would see 3 columns because there's 3 paragraphs. So this is a more challenging assignment for a second or third grader. This might spread over the course of 2 weeks to allow them to do 1 or 2 paragraphs the first week and then add on a third paragraph perhaps the second week, because of course we know there's also that outlining stage pre-writing that happened before this story was written. So this is what, and of course in each of these units we have anywhere from 3 or 4 weeks of assignments in a single unit. I think, Sherry, is that right? Would you say about 3 or 4?
Yes, they're 4.
4, okay. So about 4 weeks. So the students are practicing story writing for 4 weeks in a row. And then, you know, we'll move into a new unit. This was a creative writing unit. That means we would move back into nonfiction writing, where they're writing more of a report. And they would stay there for a good 4 weeks or so. They're practicing that unit while also picking up a new stylistic technique every week or 2 weeks, whatever the pacing is for that level. So that's kind of a look at my class. I utilize Google Classroom. Because it's second or third grade, I do accept handwritten assignments that get uploaded into Google Classroom as a PDF. I'm okay accepting that. It's obviously much better if the student is able to get an assignment typed and turned in. I can interact with them a little bit better that way. But we have a lot of fun in class. We do some games around all of the dress ups that we're learning, the vocabulary. And students, of course, always get a chance to share their writing. They really do love to share their stories and to read their paragraphs out loud. I don't force them to. But again, want to give them the opportunity for communication to practice delivering what they've written. So that's just a quick glimpse at the People and Places class for the second and third graders.
Thank you so much, Ms. Julie. And I want to say these student examples have been, I've been so surprised reading through them. And then this is a work of like a third grader, because it really shows a lot of maturity in how they're able to phrase things. And it really speaks to the step-by-step approach that IEW uses for their students. And it doesn't throw them into the deep end and provides them with a basis for everything. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. And then next we'll have Miss Sherry Grubbs talk a little bit about the medieval history-based writing lessons.
I recommend that students start class with some noise canceling headphones and with a microphone if they have one available. Even just a regular set of headphones, like an iPhone set of wired headphones, helps to block out some of that background noise. I do record my classes and post them in Classroom by the next day. So if students need to miss class for any reason, they can catch up. I begin with about 10 to 15 minutes of grammar in my classes. And I'm going to talk about the grammar in just a few minutes. But first, I want to talk about the spine or source text that we're going to use here. This is written at about a 6th grade reading level. It's the easiest of the level B sources. So it's appropriate for grades 5 through 7, definitely, or a very strong reader in 4th grade who's motivated and has the time to do the homework, which could be 2 to 3 hours a week. This semester, we're going to go through units 1 through 6 by writing 1 to 2 paragraphs per week for homework. My eyes are old, so I do require my students to turn in their work typed in Google Docs. Usually for this age, my students prefer using Google Docs because those comment bubbles on the sides that I leave them are much easier to read than in Word. Sure, when my students get to high school, I tell them they have to get used to Word and PowerPoint before they go to college. But the younger students prefer using Google Docs, and it works very well with Google Classroom, which I use. I also recommend the free version of Grammarly for editing. So if you do have a young student, their typing speed can be a factor. IEW always allows a parent to scribe for them. So if you need to type for them, that is certainly acceptable. They can handwrite their work in a rough draft and you can type it up and you can turn in their rough draft as a picture. I'll also require them to turn in their checklist, and that needs to be uploaded as a PDF or a photo. So I like to say that if you have a phone or an iPad with the Classroom app, it's super easy to go into that assignment, take a picture, and I'll have videos in the second week of class that will teach the students and walk them through all the steps so they can review those with you to walk through getting them comfortable with the technology if they haven't used Classroom before. This is an example of an outline that we created in my classes. I want my kiddos to participate and listen. So I do not ask them to write in their books during class. Instead, a friend and I who taught together for many years, who's a writer for IEW, discovered that we need to have our kids participating and everyone collaborates on this outline. Everyone gets a turn. And instead, we provide this outline at the end of class. At this level, they're not doing an outline completely independently yet. They will eventually have some time on another round through. And then we go back and we'll learn a new stylistic technique or a new model each week in this class. It's pretty fast paced. We will do some brainstorming, especially of the new techniques or the ones I notice the students need some extra help with. They're required to use 1 vocabulary word per paragraph as well. So you have the dress ups. And once we put that dress up on the list, it stays on the list. So this is cumulative review. They are getting to practice and practice and practice it until it's mastered and they're very comfortable with it. So they'll go home with their outline completed. and they'll just need to make sure that they put these outlines are designed to help us remember what the paragraph was talking about. And then they'll put it in their own words, and they'll use these checklists to complete whatever their personalized checklist says. So in class, I will say, draw your line on your personal checklist. Everything above the line is required. Everything below the line is bonus points. So you want to keep that easy plus one new thing that student is working on learning on their checklist. And we want to make sure they're not overwhelmed, but they get the appropriate amount of help. So I also want to make sure that when I create comments in editing their work, the students look at those comments carefully. So I require a revision of the final draft. This is an example of a final draft that's actually a track model essay. It's very difficult. So you see there are a lot of elements in here. We have some dress ups, we have different sentence openers, and this one is very specific in following the argumentative model. So students are required to do specific jobs with each sentence. This one's really tricky, but we do have a specific labeling system, and that can take a little while for kids to get used to. But we'll be taking a look at the techniques then that the SAT and ACT essays are looking for here. A lot of teachers will use other terms, such as use a variety of sentence types, or use complex sentences, or use vivid imagery, or use analysis. And those are vague terms to the students, and they don't always understand what that means. So Julie and I are very careful to connect the dots for the students and say, your teacher is asking for a complex sentence. What that means is this, and you already know how to do 3 different ones of these, okay? So we're trying to help them realize that they can utilize the things that we're teaching them here in their school assignments, even though when we give them assignment, it looks a little different than some of their assignments look in school sometimes. So after my students turn in their assignments and I edit them, I will always correct all of their grammar. And I will give them comments that explain why I made that correction once they've learned that particular thing in their Fix It grammar book from IEW. So I'm constantly reinforcing the grammar concepts. I also give extensive feedback on what they're doing well and at least one new thing to work on. So I want them to read this. This is the most personalized instruction I give them. I will require them to turn in a revised draft showing me that they took care of those comment bubbles and made the corrections I suggested. That's usually half of their assignment. So right away in my classes, they're going to get used to, at this level, that writing is about revising, and we're going to partner together to give them whatever help they need. If they need help to do something on their checklist, they know they can always ask me in a comment bubble, Mrs. Grubbs, could you help me figure out how to put a who, which clause in this paragraph? And I will always say yes, and I will always help them. So this extensive feedback, these clear expectations, and the level of support does make a difference in their ability to be willing to try new things and to find success more quickly. I do want to talk about the Fix It grammar briefly. I will start classes with Fix It grammar for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then students will do 3 daily sentences as homework through the week. Those daily sentences will take 10 to 15 minutes to complete. And it's important that those be done on different days whenever possible, instead of rushing through all the homework and trying to get it done. It's actually going to help the student to internalize the grammar more quickly if we let them touch it for a few minutes at a time more frequently. And so there's a big difference in my students who do the grammar homework during the week and those who don't. Maybe work with me one-on-one once a week. And there's a big difference between the students who type their grammar sentences and those who don't. So there are 3 parts to the grammar. We're going to first introduce the fact that we have the 3 levels that correspond to level A, B, and C. There are only 6 books in total. I will be using book 3, which is the first book in the middle school level. It's going to cover a lot of the dress-up techniques and sentence openers and comma rules very intently. That can be such a challenge at this grade level. It's going to be Robin Hood. The students love this story, and it's part of the story of Robin meeting Little John. And this grammar is taught in context. We're focusing on applying it. So when students take a look at a Fix-It grammar page, it looks like this. I'm going to have the sentence on the screen for them, and I'm going to use editing mark to label the sentence together, and they will participate in calling out the things that they see up here on, again, a checklist that tells them what they need to find in this passage each day. We'll have one new vocabulary word a day, and we'll have a building of the different things that they've learned over time for a total of 30 weeks. So I will cover the Learn It page with the new information, and we will do the day 1 sentence during class, and the students will do the other 3 days for the week as homework. We'll get through the first 15 weeks of the book during this semester, and we'll continue the book in the next section of the class. I do have them write what they can label on their own each day in blue or black ink, and then come along with a different color of ink, usually red, because I can see the difference between those. And they can go to the teacher's guide and check their own work. The teacher's guide is actually written at the student's level now to explain why everything is the way it is. The explanations for every answer are very clear for the students to understand. In addition, the back of the teacher's guide has a wonderful reference glossary that as students get older, they can grow into and use more often. And it's a wonderful resource for parents who are helping students with grammar homework as well. I grade the grammar homework and collect it monthly, but parents should check with their students weekly to make sure they're keeping up. If we're touching it more often, they're going to learn it faster. There's also a paradigm shift that happens here that I want to touch on. I give the kids the pep talk every year. IEW grammar is very, very different than other grammar worksheets. A lot of those, you'll focus on one concept at a time. You'll set that down. You go focus on a different concept. That is not how this works. It's cumulative. So if you start learning something like underlining prepositional phrases, you have the rest of the book to underline those prepositional phrases. IEW does not expect us to get everything perfect. And a lot of students are used to performing really well in their grammar worksheets sometimes, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. And I say, look, I need to see red ink on your papers when I look at them. I am grading based on did you do the work and did you turn it in on time? And in this class, we're not handing out letter grades. I just want to see your work turned in on time, and I want to see effort, and I want to see you correcting your work. That shows me you're learning. If I don't see anything that you're learning new, you're in the wrong book. I'm wasting your time. So by changing the way that they have expectations about this, it helps them recognize that they don't have to find everything, and yet they can challenge themselves with this list up top that's going to help them out. In addition to the grammar book, we're going to use Robin Hood, as I mentioned. And students can do whatever book in grammar they are ready for in my classes, always. But I will only cover book 3. But if your student needs a different level, it's perfectly fine. And IEW offers a money-back guarantee on all their products. So if you decide that this is too advanced for your student, you can certainly change it for level 2 if you need to. Levels 3 and 4 are pretty similar. Level 3 is a great place to start that aligns with the things we're going to be learning in this course. And I like to have the kids labeling the things in the grammar before they have to write them in their checklist. And in addition to the grammar, I will sometimes have a couple of classes this semester where we'll do book discussions. These are based on Center for Lit's Teaching the Classics, Socratic discussion method. So I ask a lot of questions. We use this story chart, and the students and I fill it in together. We're also watching out for some of the IEW style techniques that are used, and the kids have to turn in quotes from the book where they notice these style techniques. Over time, they get used to talking about literature. By the time we get to Unit 9, they're not afraid of talking about literature. They're comfortable with it. So we can talk about characters, and we can write those Unit 9 essays so much easier. So we will do 2 book discussions this semester, and that'll help us get ready for what's coming in the future. As far as the tech, we've talked about some of these things already. I also have a shopping list ready for you with direct links for the items that you'll need. And I want to cover just a little bit more about student materials. We talked about vocabulary. In the medieval text, it comes with some vocabulary quizzes. Students don't have to learn to spell the words. They just are matching the words and definitions, and I provide Quizlets for them to study with. There are some supplemental resources I've recommended with details that you can read in the shopping list that tell you which things students need most. For example, the younger students find that they're really comfortable and will use these grammar cards. As students get into middle school and high school, they like this grammar on the go, and it's a great thing to put in their school folder. This student reference packet is something that a lot of kids and students, especially as they get older, will use, but the portable walls we're going to use every single week in class. And this packet is a binder with all the models, examples, and all the helpful resources. And we build this out even as students get older, and they can take it to college with them because every writer can benefit from writing with lists and things. So over time, my students who have walked through a model can go, oh yeah, I have to write a story. That's a Unit 3 model. I have that outline. Oh yes, I printed out that example story that I did with Miss Scrubs. I can do a story like that, and they'll be able to apply that to their schoolwork as well. So I think that's all of my slides on how detailed I have. I have a lot of different parts for my class.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. This is an amazing introduction to really how IEW allows students to succeed at their own pace, but also providing the background and the necessary, tools to really happen. So I know we are running just a little bit late, but I did want to go over a couple of our questions that some of our parents had. So we're going to have our Q&A section right now. And if anybody else has any more questions, please send it to the group chat so that we can see them. I know we had a question earlier about the kindergarten and first grade classes. I don't know if either Ms. Grubbs or Ms. Renner could speak to a little bit about this one.
Me to talk about PAL. The Primary Arts of Language program is designed to help kids learn to read who haven't learned to read yet. So this is not going to be a class setting. This is a very one-on-one program. It was designed by my friend Jill Pike, who I've taught with in a co-op setting for several years. I've known Jill since we met Andrew about the same time, and she had a student who was very dyslexic and designed this program for any student, but there are all kinds of games and fun things. So if you're looking for something to do with your student at home, this can be a special option, but it is very time intensive and designed to work one-on-one with your student. And that is a complete reading program that will take you through about a third grade reading level with all the long vowels and everything included. It actually takes about 1.5 to 2 years to get a student through that. Usually it's not just a 1-year program, but it's a full reading program. A lot of curricula will take 3 years to introduce all the phonics rules. This one introduces phonics, but in the complete program, and it does have a writing component as well. There are 2 separate sections, and it partners with All About Spelling, level 1, to be the spelling program.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. And Ms. Renner, we had a question earlier about the grading aspect. Can you go over really quickly the checklist once again of a very quick overview for what it would look like for your students?
Sure. So at the youngest levels, the checklist is very simple. It will have a couple of items that we have taught them, like an ly word, a strong verb, or an adjective, for example. Those are called dress ups. Those items are on the checklist with little boxes that the students check. A couple other things will be on the checklist, like whether they created a title, whether they skipped lines on their paper, set their paper up properly, different things like that. So the grading system for IEW is not a traditional grading system. At the upper levels, or parents specifically, and it's a very rare case that parents would request point values to be assigned to the various items on the checklist, thus creating some type of percentage. I think there are some parents at the high school level that that are more comfortable with the traditional grade, but IEW philosophy doesn't really work that way. We work more on a complete or some teachers call it acceptable or accomplished, versus an incomplete paper. So that is what makes IEW a very personalized approach to writing, and that is the students just work off of a checklist and they know whether or not their assignment is complete or incomplete.
Yeah, and I love this method because it allows students to, or especially those who are afraid to get started, really know what kind of things that, if we complete this, if we add this, we're done. We're good. That's all I need to worry about.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
not about overwhelming students. It's not about continuing to come back and say, well, add a little more detail, try to be more creative. Students can be very frustrated, lose interest very quickly. A lot of students really do need to know when they're done. And it's only fair that we let them know that you have a completed paper. And if they want to return to that paper later and add more, they certainly can.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know we have a follow-up question for the below the grade 3. I believe you said you called it the POW program. So they are asking if this is mostly about reading. So for undergrade 2, I believe. So I know grade 2 is where the people and places start.
Correct.
That's right. People and Places is going to be great for someone who's already reading at a second and third grade level. That text is going to be all about the writing with some vocabulary. The primary arts of language incorporates reading, phonics instruction primarily, and it does have a writing component where we start to introduce and talk about stories and ask questions about details in those stories. It's very gently done, very some Aesop fables and some gentle things, some poetry, but it's primarily focused on most of the content is about reading and has games that students can play to help build those phonics skills.
Right. And I want to answer one of the other questions here. So much of what IEW focuses on, and from what I've heard, is how we connect the aspects of reading, of the aspects of finding details, of the aspects of vocabulary, and all of that together makes up essay writing. So I know we had a question from a parent, are there classes specifically for essay writing? How would you answer that?
Absolutely. We work our way through these 9 units, and when you get to unit 8, that is the 5-paragraph essay known as the Champlain model. These 3 body paragraphs, introduction, conclusion. We don't typically get into unit 8 in the elementary level, but we will do a shorter introduction and conclusion. However, all those intricate parts, especially the analysis for the conclusion, we ask students to make a claim and prove it with some analysis there. They're going to take a position and do a little bit more than what's often asked in early conclusions. So we definitely get to that kind of essay. In addition, I mentioned the argumentative essay. I will introduce that usually in the very end of the medieval class if my students are ready for it. And I build that skill a little earlier than most teachers do. We eventually get into research-based essays where we're searching online for information in each of these texts. In the medieval, we will talk about Leonardo da Vinci in the next semester. We'll use online sources as well as some book sources to teach students how to choose the right amount of material, and eventually they'll learn how to do works cited and citations and all those things. We even get into the persuasive and argumentative essays in the high school levels. They're very challenging and they're very specific models. So it takes some mastery of the style techniques and some development of the thinking skills to be ready to do this. But as I said, this proves a very nice launching pad for my kids who were ready to go into some of those things in debate and speech as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate that IEW doesn't throw students into it immediately with regards to essay writing, just because it is so difficult, especially for students who are ESL learners, or maybe who have parents that are immigrants who did not grow up in this country and are not used to some of the writing norms or the academic writing norms. So this is a great way for students to learn all of the basic materials before we even get to the writing aspect. And thank you, Principal Lee, for answering for the is there a tryout class? And I believe we have one other question regarding similar to, so is there a pre-class evaluation to help determine which level mostly suits the student?
I do have a Calendly link at the bottom of all of my emails. So I allow parents to click on that and set up a one-on-one meeting if they would like to talk about evaluations. They can send me writing samples. I like to look at a report and a story if you have both of those available. And I'm looking for IEW style techniques and a few other things. So I love to see the messy process. If you have rough drafts available, if they're used to doing outlines or not, that'll help me as well. But I'm happy to take a look at any of those things. Primarily, though, we need to keep in mind that it's really, really, really important for students to work preferably below their reading level. We definitely want to work at or below their reading level. So that has to be our guiding factor first.
I think for the second and third grade class, seeing as how it's probably their first opportunity or their first go around with, structured writing, just relying on parents. I've had one-on-one conferences. They don't typically have, writing samples. Some might, but I just let parents know that as long as they're writing sentences, they know what capitalization and periods are. They're ready to start expressing themselves. They are reading at a second grade level. And sometimes I just ask parents, hey, test them out at home. Tell them to write 3 or 4 sentences about their dog or about their sister or brother. Are they able to do that? Are they able to express a few ideas? Then they're ready. We can definitely get them started at that point.
That's wonderful. So I know we are a little bit over time already, but I did want to cover one last question before we wrap up here today. And this one might be a little bit for our principal here instead. So I know that the IEW has the curriculum and classes for the high school students, but is Pyramid currently offering those classes right now?
Pyramid will not offer in spring, but like I said in the WeChat group, we are hoping, so with this great start of this new year, new program, I hope we can roll over, the classes for every level. So maybe including Miss Sherry's mentioned, there will be a college level. So if some kids do need help, we Pyramid can support. This is what I want for Pyramid. We are offering the support for the kids' needs. I think that's what I prefer. Then I have another parents actually asked me where new classes for grade 2 to 3 will be given in the summer or fall. Yes, I think it's not in summer, right? Because Miss Julie will not teaching in summer, but we probably definitely offer again in fall. And hopefully, but Miss Shuri does teach year round. And if needed, I think we will have more, hopefully invite more instructors on board. But one thing I would like to introduce and to you guys, to the parents, that we're so lucky to have Julie and Miss Shuri as well. So both of them are experienced, and most important, I think they have the passion for teaching. So that is kind of my recruitment requirement, because I love to teach. I love kids, so I always want to work with around the same heart teachers. So I think we are so lucky to have them. They both have many years of experience. They both taught their own kids and very successful stories. And me as a tryout parents using IEW, I think we're all related to IEW. So I'm very, very excited. I think this will be a very successful, courses. And I hope it could be really year-round, courses for all levels, and it can continue help our kind of, especially we are, sorry, I say so if some parents are not like Asian community, but we are definitely open to all the community members, but mainly us, our Asian, community, like Tim mentioned, we are most of us are immigrants and we're ESL, parents. So sometimes I feel I want to help them, even though my major is in English, but there's no way, my English is same as a native speaker. So I feel our kids need that help as well. Like I really appreciate both teachers mentioned, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and also ADHD, and some of the Asian kids are more, into the science mindset. So writing could be really hard. They don't know where to start. So if you are those parents, I'm one of them. Okay, so I have my experience, and I know Miss Julie and Miss Sherry have that experience to help those kids. So I think they will build strong foundation. And also, I really back them to start from grade 2 and 3. Believe me, it is hard to teach writing, even reading at that young level, but writing is really hard. So I really want to say thank you, Julie, for taking this challenge with me, because my heart again, to provide a kind of a serious support along when they grown up. I do know, when you go to the high school, when you write the college essay, oh my God, I read some of the essays that our even native speak kids write, and I just worry. I worried so much as an educator and as a mom. Okay, I don't want to see those essays again, because they are such a great, wonderful young kids, but they don't know how to write for themselves. They don't know how to write for the mission director that their essay should be. So that's why, coming back to my heart, I want we as a pyramid, as a school, we're able to provide some of the courses like this, some kind of a supplement to what they can get from school. And I know Ms. Sherry mentioned some of the public schools, some private school using it. But to be honest, we're in Frankfurt, we're one of the top, middle school district. But my son really sucks as a grammar and writing. They're good. They have a very good reading and writing, but they have a really kind of, I don't know, not up to the level of the courses. And the Tim was grown up in the city, in the CPS. CPS has a very, very good school, right? Everyone probably who are in our today's call knows that we have a very, very good system. But believe it or not, they don't have a good phonic teaching system. If no good phonics system, how could you have a good vocabulary grabbing system? And then how could you have a great, grammar and the writing? So every year they teach from noun to an adjective. I'm joking, I'm not joking. Okay, every year they stop at the adjective, even not to touch adverb yet. And then the school stop. And next year again. So sick of a grammar book and never really finished. That's how Tim was when he in the top talented program, gifted the program of CPS. That's why I have to say, sorry, Tim. So your mom, as a ESL learner, as an English major, I got to teach you grammar because I can't deal with it anymore. I can't deal with my son is such a great English speaker and cannot write a good sentence. That is really true. Okay, so I'm sorry I add a little personal story, but you guys can now know my heart. That's why I want to invite the IEW to our pyramid system, because I do believe our community need this kind of support. Our kids need it. So I really want to say thank you again for everyone who participate, and thank you again for Miss Julie and Miss Sherry for your kind of a partner with us. And I know this will be a very successful program in our community.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so here's some marketing stuff. So if you are ready to register the IEW courses, please scan the barcode and register. If you have any questions, you know where to find me, in the WeChat, in the email, in my you know, you probably can find my phone in the WeChat as well. So anyway, so feel free to, you know, reaching out to me. Feel free, you know, I can help you to connect with, you know, Miss Julie and Miss Sherry if you need some estimation. But to me, I think, you know, probably just register them. If you feel this is not for your kids, not ready, and then we can, you know, kind of reimburse, or you save it for the next level when we, you know, kind of roll over all the classes. So we are very flexible. Like I said, our goal is to support your kid, support his needs, you know, kind of help him to grow. So we have many classes as well. So feel free, like I said, to feel free to ask if you need some, you know, support or answers.
Thank you so much, Principal Lee, and thank you so much for our two wonderful featured speakers, Miss Julie Renner and Miss Sherry Grubbs. Really appreciate your time here today, as well as preparing the presentation. And thank you all of our parents who, you know, sat with us. I know we did run a little long, but there were so many great material I feel we needed to go through, so I didn't want to, you know, cut anybody off too short. But I really appreciate everybody for their time tonight, and hope to see more and more of our young students become better communicators. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Jen, for hosting us. Thank you so much. Happy New Year, everyone, and have
Happy
a
New
great
Year.
weekend. Bye-bye.